Imagine a renowned CEO slipping incognito into his own domain only to confront bias head-on. Early Saturday, shortly after 10 a.m., Terrence Hall tilted the brim of his baseball cap as he peered into the rearview mirror. The figure reflected was scarcely the mogul behind a multi-million-dollar empire but merely an unremarkable face in the throng. Clad in a simple hoodie and worn jeans, he appeared nothing like the immaculately tailored suits that usually charted his day. Today, the journey transcended boardrooms and spreadsheets. It was an odyssey into his own realm, unseen and unguarded, to witness life as an ordinary customer. Terrence had long embraced the magic of connection, building his enterprise on the vow that every patron was cherished regardless of their story. Yet lately, murmurs of discontent had crept up the hierarchy, grumblings of subpar service, hidden prejudice, and an alarming lack of care from his team. If these whispers bore any truth, he felt compelled to experience them firsthand, not as a commanding executive, but as a genuine consumer. This particular outlet nestled on the outskirts of Dallas, Texas, in a lively suburban shopping complex. It wasn't the crown jewel of his brand nor the record-setting performer in his network, yet it bore sentimental weight. It was the inaugural venture beyond his native state, a daring risk that had blossomed magnificently. In its nascent days, Terrence had frequented its halls, but now, years on, he questioned whether the welcoming spirit and inclusiveness he once envisioned had endured. Easing his car into a parking space, Terrence drew a deep breath as a cocktail of anticipation and apprehension washed over him. He was poised to step into uncharted territory, shedding the armor of his title to test whether his core values still resonated. No matter how jarring the truth might be, he believed it was a debt he owed both himself and every individual who crossed that threshold. Yet, unbeknownst to him, his quest for authenticity was about to usher in an unforgettable moment, one destined to shatter his preconceptions and challenge the very foundation of his enterprise. Stepping from his car into a bustling lot, Terrence merged with a sea of vehicles beneath a blazing sun that scattered glints across every windshield. He tugged at the strap of his battered canvas bag, the kind casually slung over an everyday shopper's shoulder. Today, he was not the illustrious CEO Terrence Hall, he was simply an anonymous patron, his identity rendered irrelevant. The storefront shimmered under the midday light, its bold, familiar logo stirring a surge of pride as he neared the automatic door. This was his creation, a dream transformed into reality. Yet that pride soon yielded to a sharper focus when he stepped inside and was greeted by a cool blast of conditioned air. The store pulsed with life, shoppers maneuvered carts laden with goods, and a lively chorus of children's voices filled the air. Near the toy section, uniformed staff bustled with purpose, restocking shelves, processing purchases, guiding customers, in an orchestrated dance that seemed flawless to an untrained eye. But Terrence's mission was far from superficial, he was determined to delve deeper. Pausing by a vibrant display of kitchen gadgets, he absorbed every detail. Nearby, a young woman in a striped jacket conversed warmly with a customer about product features, while a stock associate methodically rearranged items with efficient yet detached movements. At the far end, a younger man leaned against the electronics counter, engrossed in his phone with an air of indifference. Choosing to pursue that lead, Terrence wandered through the aisles at a relaxed, unhurried pace typical of a casual buyer. He picked up a pair of headphones and turned them over in his hands, as if weighing a potential purchase, a subtle experiment. Would this employee greet him with a friendly smile or offer assistance? Yet nothing came. The young man scarcely glanced up from his phone, barely registering his presence. Terrence lingered, affording the employee every opportunity to engage, but still, there was no response. An uneasy knot of disquiet twisted in his stomach, though he hesitated to leap to conclusions. Perhaps the staffer was simply preoccupied, or oblivious to his presence. Continuing his stroll, Terrence carefully observed the unfolding interactions. His eyes landed on an older woman near the home goods section, visibly frustrated and searching for help. Just as he considered stepping in, another employee appeared, radiant and attentive, whose cheerful demeanor instantly eased her dismay. The contrast to his earlier encounter was stark. Resolute, he retraced his steps toward the electronics counter, determined to retest the indifference, a decision that would soon reveal that this lapse was no isolated oversight but symptomatic of a deeper malaise. Making his way back, Terrence now clutched a box set of Bluetooth speakers and gently set it on the counter, a deliberate act intended to capture notice. At last, the young employee lifted his gaze, his features void of warmth. "Can I help you?" he inquired flatly, his tone laden with disinterest, signaling his reluctance to engage. With a gentle smile aimed at diffusing the tension, Terrence replied, "I was curious, could you share a bit about these?" Are they suited for outdoor use? The employee offered only a perfunctory glance at the box, followed by a dismissive shrug. I don't know, probably, he mumbled, his attention already drifting back to his phone. Startled, Terrence blinked and asked, could you double-check that for me? I need to be sure before I decide. The employee exhaled deeply, as if Terrence's inquiry were an unbearable imposition. Silently, he snatched the box, flipped it over, and skimmed the back. They're weatherproof, he mumbled, handing it back without further explanation. Frustration welled within Terrence, yet he maintained a composed tone. All right, but are they compatible with most devices? The employee rolled his eyes and retorted dismissively, look, all the details are right here on the box, you can read it yourself, while gesturing vaguely toward the shelf. Pick something else, it doesn't matter to me. A heavy silence fell between them, punctuated only by the low, constant hum of the store. Terrence sensed the mounting tension seep into his own posture. This was no mere lapse, it was blatant dismissiveness. Surveying the scene, he noticed that other patrons received warm, personalized attention. A white couple near the front was being assisted attentively by the very same young man who had earlier helped an elderly customer. Yet here, he was barely acknowledged. Determined to probe further, Terrence said, you seem busy, might there be someone else available to assist? The employee's lips curled into a disdainful smirk. I don't think anyone's free right now, just figure it out, he replied, his tone cutting sharply. The remark stung deeper than Terrence expected. He wasn't angry yet, only profoundly disappointed. This wasn't an isolated case, it hinted at something more insidious, a deeper ugliness that extended beyond him. Before he could add another word, the young man turned away, snatched his phone, and strolled off toward the back of the store. Rooted to the spot with the box of speakers in hand, Terrence paused, considering an exit, but swiftly dismissed the thought. His mission was not yet complete. Little did he know that this encounter of cold disregard would soon unveil an even graver undercurrent in the culture he believed he had nurtured. Placing the speakers back on the shelf, his mind raced with conflicting thoughts. This wasn't merely unprofessional conduct, it felt personally affronting. Determined to further investigate, he roamed the store to observe other interactions. In the clothing section, a young Latina employee meticulously folded shirts on a display. Her warm greeting, let me know if you need help with anything, sparked a vivid contrast to the earlier icy reception. Feigning casual browsing, Terrence watched as she continued assisting an elderly gentleman, patiently helping him find the right size and even suggesting a matching tie. The man's gratitude shone through, and the genuine exchange lit a small flame of hope in Terrence's heart. Perhaps not everything was lost. Yet as he advanced toward the home goods section, a hushed conversation abruptly halted him. Two young employees, casually leaning against a shelf, were locked in a low, unmistakably disrespectful dialogue. That guy over there, probably just here to browse, one sneered, subtly nodding toward Terrence. People like him never splurge on anything significant. Terrence felt his jaw clench as he pretended to inspect a set of pots and pans. The other employee chuckled, yeah, he doesn't seem to have the cash for this stuff, probably just wasting time. It was a gut punch. To them, he was merely another black man roaming the store, presumed incapable of affording much. Their casual dismissal spoke volumes. It wasn't the failure of a single employee but a cultural rot that had been allowed to fester. Suppressing the urge to confront, he instead drifted toward the checkout, determined to gather every insight before acting. At the register, he encountered a middle-aged black woman efficiently processing purchases with a gracious, professional air. Her name tag read Denise. Terrence observed as she welcomed each customer with a warm smile and steady tone. When his turn arrived, she met his eyes and asked, "Did you find everything all right?" "Not exactly," Terrence replied in a measured tone, adding, "I think I'll hold off for now." Denise's smile faltered briefly before she responded, "Well, if you need anything, just let us know, we're here to help." Her sincere kindness momentarily lightened the burden in his chest, affirming that not every employee embraced the dismissive attitudes that troubled him, though the inconsistency was glaring. Why did some team members exude genuine warmth while others displayed overt bias? As Terrence left the store, an unsettling intuition gnawed at him, a sense that a deeper force was at work, one that demanded confrontation. Later, seated in his car with the afternoon heat smearing the windows, he gripped the steering wheel as his gaze remained fixed on the store emblazoned with his company's logo. It felt surreal. This enterprise, his pride and joy, was meant to symbolize opportunity, fairness, and respect. Yet the day's encounters had painted a very different picture. The events of the day had sketched a narrative he neither anticipated nor could ignore. The indifference of the electronics employee haunted him, but it was the offhand, degrading remarks in the home goods section that stung the deepest. These were not isolated missteps, they signified a pervasive problem embedded in the company's culture, one that had been allowed to slide unchecked. He recalled the early days when he personally mentored every manager and handpicked staff who shared his values, when treating every customer like family was paramount regardless of their status. But as the business grew, those intimate touches began to fade. Delegation became necessary, but had it come at the cost of the principles he'd once so carefully instilled? Terrence wondered if he had grown too detached from daily operations. Success had fueled expansion, but with it came dangerous blind spots. Were his managers truly fostering respect, or had they grown complacent, ignoring subtle prejudices and unprofessional conduct? Had he failed to equip his employees with the tools to combat bias and treat everyone equally? Drawing a deep, steadying breath, he replayed the day's interactions in his mind. Denise, the kind, steady cashier, had been a living reminder of what his business should be, yet her warmth was now overshadowed by colleagues who lacked her empathy. This wasn't solely about customer service, it was the very culture he had permitted to take root. Reaching for the notebook he always kept in his glove compartment, Terrence scribbled his reflections. This was not merely about fixing one store, it was about ensuring every employee, in every location, fully grasped the weight of representing his brand. Accountability, cascading from the top, was at stake. Yet before he could begin rebuilding, he recognized one more essential step, a step destined to expose the true depth of the problem and confront those at its core. With measured resolve, Terrence re-entered the store, his steps quiet yet determined. He was not there to stage a spectacle or shame anyone, it wasn't about ego, but about mending a culture gone awry. Approaching the customer service desk, he requested a word with the manager. Moments later, a man in his late 40s approached, his name tag read Brian, and his manner was courteous though laced with caution. "How can I assist you today?" Brian asked. Terrence extended a firm hand. "Terrence Hall," he stated. At the sound of his name, Brian's eyes widened in astonishment. For a fleeting moment, his composure faltered before he recovered. "Mr. Hall, it's an honor to have you here." "Had I known you were visiting," Brian began, but Terrence raised a hand. "That's exactly my point, Brian, you were never meant to know. I came in as a regular customer, to see our operations unvarnished. And what I witnessed today is unacceptable." Brian's face flushed as he murmured, "I'm sorry to hear that. Could you tell me exactly what happened?" Terrence recounted the day's events, the blatant indifference at the electronics counter, the degrading offhand comments, and the stark disparities in customer treatment. Speaking calmly yet firmly, his words carried the weight of disappointment. "This isn't merely about one errant employee," he declared. "It's about a culture that permits such behavior. I built this company on the idea that every customer deserves respect, regardless of who they are. Today, I witnessed the very opposite." Brian shifted uncomfortably. "I wasn't aware of these issues. I've always strived to ensure our team upholds the company's values." Terrence nodded slowly. "I believe you, but something is clearly falling apart, and it's not solely your responsibility, it's mine as well. Somewhere along the line, the very values that founded this company have been diluted. That ends today." He then instructed Brian to call the staff for an impromptu meeting in the break room. Within minutes, employees assembled, their faces etched with a blend of curiosity and apprehension. Standing before them, Terrence was no longer just an anonymous customer but the unexpected leader. "Good afternoon," he began steadily. "For those who may not know me, I'm Terrence Hall, the founder and CEO of this company. Today, I visited Incognito to observe our operations firsthand." A heavy silence fell as his words sank in. Pausing to meet each gaze, he continued, "What I witnessed today is deeply troubling. Some of you embodied the kindness and professionalism on which this company was built, yet others fell short of even the most basic standard of respect. This shortfall is not solely on you, it is also on me, for not preserving our cultural integrity." His eyes then locked onto the young electronics employee, now looking visibly pale and uneasy. "You dismissed me, ignored me, and implied that my time wasn't worth your attention. That is unacceptable. Even more disheartening, I overheard remarks making assumptions about my identity and financial means based solely on a glance. I'm not here to shame anyone, I'm here to set things right. If we fail to honor every customer with respect, we all fail, and I refuse to let that happen." Observing the transformation on their faces, from shock to thoughtful reflection, Terence understood this was only the first step toward essential change. He paused, letting the silence deepen, then continued, identifying these problems is merely the beginning, we must act. Here's what will happen. First, we will institute mandatory training on bias and customer service, not just in this store, but across every location. We cannot assume that good manners come naturally, we must teach, reinforce, and hold each other accountable. Brian nodded, relief mingling with determination. Understood, Mr. Hall. I will ensure it happens. Terence pressed on. Second, I will be visiting more stores unannounced. This is not about catching anyone off guard, it's about staying connected and witnessing firsthand what occurs on the floor. Nervous glances passed among the staff, yet a sense of understanding began to take root, especially in the eyes of those like Denise. Finally, with a softening tone, Terence added, lastly, I want to hear from all of you, what is working and what isn't. Are there issues with leadership or policies? My door is always open, and I will also provide an anonymous channel for any concerns. I founded this company to create something different, something better, a place where every individual feels valued. Somewhere along the line, we lost a bit of that spirit, but I refuse to give up. I know we can improve, and I am counting on each of you to help restore our vision. As the meeting concluded, Terence approached Denise, the exemplary cashier, and said warmly, thank you for being a beacon of light today. Your attitude reminds me why I started this business. Denise returned his smile steadily, thank you, Mr. Hall. I just try to treat people the way I'd like to be treated. Leaving the store for the second time that day, Terence felt a blend of exhaustion and cautious hope. The road ahead promised to be challenging but was absolutely necessary. He had been confronted with a stark wake-up call, and now it was incumbent upon him to act. As he drove away, a renewed sense of purpose stirred within him, reminding him that sometimes facing harsh truths is the only way forward, and that every step toward change begins with one courageous first step. Reflect on this tale, even the smallest actions can spark monumental change. Respect others, speak out against injustice, and persist in your pursuit of a fairer, brighter world.